Alrighty, we're going to get going here. So I want to say a big and hearty welcome to all of you who are joining us today for our third and final session of Getting Through the Cracks. I'm really excited for today. My name is Erin, and I'm the moderator for this series of conversations which have been hosted by Theatre Alibi and the University of Exeter. I'm a lecturer in applied and educational theatre at the University of Exeter. I'm on the board of Theatre Alibi, and I also run a company called Doorstep Arts based in Torbay in South Devon. And it's been an absolute delight over the last few Thursdays to host a series of what I think have been provoking, inspiring, challenging, heartfelt conversations about our industry, where we're going, how we find some kind of safe, secure footing right now, or how we keep dancing anyway, even though there isn't any. So thank you for joining us if you're here as an attendee today. What I would ask is, if you're there and listening, could you please let us know that you're there and listening by introducing yourself in the chat. Let us know your name, let us know where you are, let us know what your title is if you have a title. Please feel free to do that. It would be really lovely for us to know who's out there and listening, because there's a lot of expertise joining us for these events, and it's sometimes not just the panelists who have the expertise, but actually quite a few of our attendees. So please do let us know. Yes, fantastic. Some of you have already started in the chat, and that's great. Keep them coming. Let's fill up that chat box. I want to say a big thank you to Theatre Alibi and the University of Exeter for making these conversations happen. They felt very timely to me, and I think based on our number of attendees, I think they're timely for other people as well. We're going to ask you as attendees to be really vocal contributors today. So if we say things that are provoking or challenging or inspiring or have synergy with what you're feeling and thinking, please do use the chat box to let us know that. Thoughts, comments, talk to each other. We'd like it to be a kind of a lively and dynamic conversation. So please do feel free to type merrily away in that chat box as much as you'd like. If you would like to pose a question to one of our panelists, you are welcome to do so. And we would ask that you use the Q&A box down the bottom of your screen to do that. So if you click on Q&A, you'll see that you have an opportunity to pose a question. We've got a couple of questions we're going to kick off with, but really happy to turn the floor over to you as attendees, and we can talk about what it is you would like us to talk about. So you're welcome to pose a question even now, right at the start of the session. Otherwise, I'll make it clear when we're turning the floor over to attendees' questions. If you see a question in the Q&A that you really like, you can like it, physically like it, let us know, and if it gets upvoted, we'll make sure it gets asked. So you use your democratic skills there and feel free to like other people's questions. And there's a slight chance if you do pose a question today, we might ask you to ask it live. That's optional, you don't have to. I'm happy to read your question out for you, but if you would like to pose your question live, we'd really like there to be some active dialogue. So that's an option, should you wish to do so. We've got in the wings Hattie and Pilar from Theatre Alibi, who will be there to handle any technical issues, anything that comes up. So any problems, just let us know. And at the end of today's session, we'll also circulate some links and some follow-on information via email. So there'll be a chance to find out a bit more about things that get discussed by the panelists today. We might also pop some links in the chat box to some of their work as they're talking about it, or here at the start. So if you'd like to have a scroll through websites or explore a bit more about their practice, you can do so as we're chatting today. So that's it for the housekeeping. That's it for the introduction. Oh, we've got some fantastic people joining us today in the attendees. This is great. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and we're going to turn this over to a conversation. So we are delighted to welcome these three panelists today. The first person I'd like to welcome is Peter Higgin. Peter is the Director of Enrichment and the Joint CEO at Punchdrunk. He's a founder member of Punchdrunk Theatre Company and has worked in various roles for the company since its inception in 2000. Punchdrunk is world-renowned for its epic productions in abandoned or disused buildings or sites. The company has productions running in New York and Shanghai and has toured work to Australia and Asia. Peter has always fostered a strong belief in the transformative power of the company's practice and the importance of widening access to this work, and we'll be talking more about that today. In 2008, he established Punchdrunk Enrichment, taking the company's innovative practice into educational and community settings. His work is diverse, from magical installations in primary schools to large participatory performances in found spaces or long-form storytelling projects in care homes. Since its inception, Punchdrunk Entertainment has engaged with over 100,000 participants. Since 2016, he has been joint CEO of the charity and oversees all artistic activity on this side of the business. What an intro. Welcome, Peter.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today.
No, thanks. I'm looking at all of the people here. It's a great turnout from all over the world. So honoured to be on the panel and honoured to be in a space with the other panelists, yourself and everybody who's joining from wherever they're joining from. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Good to have these properly international conversations right now, I think. Our second panelist I'm going to introduce is Boomer Stacy. We can all see the snow behind you, Boomer. I think everyone's excited by the snow.
That's only because you don't have to shovel it.
I'm going to do a little intro to you. Boomer Stacy is the Executive Director of International Performing Arts for Youth, which is IPAY, as well as the Executive Director of the Professional Association of Canadian Theatres, or PACT. Aside from serving and supporting the professional live performing arts theatre sectors and work in international partnerships and collaboration, organizational leadership, event production, learning and networking, and festival curation, Boomer also has a wide range of experience in international performing arts for young audiences. Prior work includes the artistic directorship of the renowned Milk International Children's Festival of the Arts at Harbourfront Centre in Toronto. Boomer holds a BFA in visual arts, specializing in photography. He splits living locations between the suburbs just outside Toronto, and a cozy cabin in the woods by a lake. I'm guessing that's where you are right now.
Yes, I'm by, yes, yeah. And I just want to acknowledge that I'm also on the traditional unceded lands of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, and the Algonquin peoples. I'm very privileged to be here by the lake today.
That was such a perfect intro because I was about to read that sentence out and you've said that so much better than I would have. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that I'm hoping that's going to come up in our discussions today, Boomer.
The snow or the traditional lands?
All of it.
Okay, beautiful.
The last sentence of this intro is that Boomer is currently pining for a return to the road once again to attend many national and international theatre events and festivities. Aren't we all? Oh, I'm missing it so much.
Yeah, last year, I'm just seeing some of the comments and where people are calling in from. And last year, this time, I was with my family in Cornwall, in the Tinner's Arms in Zenner. So I'm missing that greatly, and also recognizing that's a privilege for me to be able to do that, but missed the day, and looking forward to that return.
Yeah. I think we're all feeling a slight sadness that these symposium events couldn't be in person, but also I'm really aware it's opening the door for lots of people to join us who might not have been able to otherwise, so silver lining there somewhere. Well, welcome, Boomer. We're delighted you're with us.
Thank you.
And I'm also delighted to introduce Pamela Walker, our third panelist. And we have Pamela here, and we also have, sneakily hidden, Anna Derricourt. So I'm going to sort of introduce them together. You can see Pamela, attendees, and we might be able to hear Anna's voice at some points today, which is very exciting. So Pamela joined the Imaginate Festival as a senior producer in August 2016. She is responsible for producing Edinburgh International Children's Festival and Festival on Tour, Creative Development Programme, oversees theatre in schools Scotland, and manages other projects throughout the year. She studied a BA in Honours in Drama and Theatre Arts at Queen Margaret University, and after university co-founded a producing and project management business, which included producing new work, running a festival venue, schools touring, and arts administration. Pamela then worked for 10 years at the National Theatre of Scotland in a number of different roles, including learning project manager and producer. And throughout that time, she worked on touring productions, large-scale community and schools work, site-specific and main stage productions. Whew. Welcome, Pamela.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And it's nice to be here with Boomer and Peter this morning, and yourself, Erin. I would just to say that this time last year, I was in Norway at Showbox Festival. So I'm also having that moment today of going, oh, I wish we could be there, but you know, we can't. So we're here instead, which is great as well. So
yeah. And I'll also introduce Anna quickly. So Anna is here in voice form with us from Theatre in Schools Scotland, and Anna's a producer with that programme. Theatre in Schools Scotland is a partnership project between Imaginate and the National Theatre of Scotland. And Anna's worked on that project since its inception in 2016, and she rejoined Imaginate in April 2019. So she had been there before from 1999 to 2003. Anna coordinated Imaginate's festival and other projects, and she's also worked for a number of years at Catherine Wheels as the Schools and Touring Development Manager. Anna has a master's degree in social anthropology and has had a varied career working in the environmental sector, economic development, sports development, tourism, and events. So welcome, Anna. We're really pleased that you're with us, and we're hoping that you can be unmuted and chiming in as much as you'd like today. That's the hopes, although she's muted right now, so I don't think she can say anything. So I'm going to kick us off with our first question. We were having a little discussion just before we went live on this about the fine line between being inspirational and being realistic. And I sort of feel like I want to say this, that we have promoted that these conversations are going to be inspirational presentations, but we don't want it to be false positivity. I think we're all really aware that it's challenging times out there, and we're dealing with some, I'm not going to say unprecedented events. We're dealing with some very challenging circumstances, and I think we want to be honest about that, but also think about how we vision forward. And so that's going to be our theme for today. The topic, the general focus is, how do we keep making our work? And in the aim of starting from a point of inspiration, but also perhaps pragmatic realism, I'm just curious, I'd like each of our panelists to talk a little bit to us about something that's inspiring or motivating you at the moment in terms of your next steps. So those could be artistic and creative next steps in terms of your practice. They could be around enrichment, could be strategic next steps. But what's something that's sort of lighting your fire, that's making you feel motivated in terms of how we move forward from here? Is there a panelist who'd like to kick off?
I'll go if you like.
Thanks,
Peter. And Pamela, if you're, yeah, I mean, I thought, really sort of hot off the press in terms of today, what's inspiring me. She had a really good team meeting with our team, who a lot of them have been on furlough from March till October within the charity team and within the enrichment practice. And actually, they all jumped on the call this morning because they'd been into the office, actually in the office, doing some filming for a number of projects that we're doing. And actually that's, some of the first activity really that they will have done and that we've done since March. And the excitement I got from seeing my team and the infectious energy of that was really inspiring, because we're doing things differently. We're filming work, which for an immersive theatre company, when we're all about the experience and the sensory engagement, is quite a huge departure. So if you asked me at the start of this year, that's what we'd be doing, I'd probably say no. But actually the fact that we've got team in there, that building one of our sets, getting something ready for families to engage with over Christmas, that's really, really, that's inspiring. That gives us all energy and all hope. And I think another conversation that happened just over the last week, we've got a learning collective, the Punchdrunk Learning Collective, which is 17 teachers and schools from across London, and we got those guys together and we hadn't seen them since March. And actually what we've been working towards is trying to give them a support package and to try and pick up our program. And actually they're already doing lots. So it was inspiring to see, and as a school governor as well, it's really inspiring to see how hard teachers work. And we saw one of our schools they'd come out of a project where an astronaut's suit fell from the sky and into their playground. They'd come up with this elaborate project which they played out, and they also managed to hack into their CCTV system and fake one of the teachers coming into sight on, somebody, not one of the teachers, somebody coming into sight on over the weekend, and then that added to the authenticity of it. So I'm all about supporting teachers to do that kind of work and to take up that practice. So just to re-engage with those guys and to sort of see some of those, I know it's not the same for everybody, but to see a few green shoots coming through, and to seeing, being connected, and actually being connected online is different. But it was a really good turnout actually. And we had a really good conversation about trying to help support them to do that kind of work, which they can lead themselves. So yeah, a few moments of inspiration in terms of sort of coming back to life again and sort of finding ourselves in a place where we're beginning to think about making work or having conversations which are moving in that direction.
Well, and it sounds like making work fairly imminently if you're saying things for Christmas time. Is that?
Yes, it was filmed this week, and we're releasing something in the next couple of weeks, which has been a real tight time scale for the team who've been working on it, but I think they're really happy we put that upon them. So yeah, just a little thing to help support families and to connect with our project, the Lost Lending Library.
Oh,
but
great.
that's very top secret, actually. We haven't announced that yet. My head of
I was
comms
just going to
probably,
say, I was going to hope that you were going to talk more about that one, because it's a great project. Okay, Boomer, what about you? What's inspiring you at the moment, or giving you some motivation?
I think a couple things come to mind. Here in Canada, being part of the Canadian national theatre scene, since the beginning of the pandemic, we've heard a number of stories of how artists and companies have shifted and continued to tell stories and make work and interact with the community. And the longer we've gone into the pandemic, I think we're hearing more and more from artists about this idea of returning to why they started to theater in the first place and why they created their company, and so it's that shift away from grandiose and, ooh, we've been established for so long, we're getting more money, we can make bigger work. And it's actually stripped their work back, and it's become once again about their audience and who their intended audience was and why they want to make work for that audience. And so I think it's a really lovely shift, to think about making work literally in your own backyard and what that means, smaller scale and out of necessity, smaller audiences. As I'm sure a lot of you know, the scale here for many theaters is huge, like literally some spaces, thousands of seats. And for young ones especially, I think the return to more intimate work and smaller scale and in a different way than we have traditionally gone to see work the last few decades, I think is a lovely thing. And then on the opposite side of things, like going from that live and intimate and in your backyard, later this afternoon I'm doing another session with Creative New Zealand, introducing Kiwi and Maori artists creating work for young audiences to our global network of IPAY. And never been able to bring the group over before to IPAY because of financial reasons, but now we're able to host a session and give space to these beautiful artists that haven't had, we haven't been able to showcase before. So this format, as impersonal as it can be, it's also an opportunity to meet and connect, and so I'm inspired by that, and hopefully there's a lot of talk of after this, how do we maintain that openness and that hybrid nature of connecting via this platform as well as physically in a space with folk.
Yeah, well, you've got a stacked day. You've got us this morning,
and then walking my dog several times in between, so
that's a good rich set of things
it's not
to be
about
doing.
that, yeah.
Brilliant. Pamela, what about you? What's inspiring you?
So I think as a company, I think I'm okay to say this. I'm sure Noel's in the background, so he's going to be like, no, don't say this. But as a company, like we didn't really focus on digital, and we found the concept of digital and children working on this digital platform quite hard, actually. And sort of COVID and this situation has kind of pushed us in. Sorry, just see, go for it, Pamela. Got permission, good.
Got for you, Erin.
So yeah, sorry. So it gave us a push to go, okay, we really need to focus on, we can't stop. Imaginate as a company, we're really, we really just go for it a lot of the time, and we've really tried to focus and try and find ways of connecting with our audiences and with our artists all the time. And that this situation was not going to stop us. That was one of the things that I think as a team we really went, it's not going to stop us. And, you know, we just had to refocus and find ways that we could still connect with those audiences and still connect with our artists in a different way. And we've not always got it right. And we are learning day by day how to make things better. But one of the things that's really inspired me, and actually Anna might want to talk about this a bit more as well, but one of the things that's really inspired me in the last couple of weeks is Jonah Repa, a brilliant theatre artist in Scotland, who a lot of people will know, has been adapting her Potato Needs a Bath performance, which is for nursery and P1 sort of age group. And this was a piece that we were going to put out at this time of year anyway. This was supposed to go in tour for Theatre in School Scotland out across Scotland. And it was going to be a traditional Theatre in School Scotland tour live in the schools and nurseries. And, you know, one of the things that we started to talk about when this all happened, we had to obviously cancel our tours that were out in tour already, but also had to look at the work that was coming up as well, which was, one of them was Potato Needs Bath. And Shona's just been brilliant. I mean, I must admit, Shona and Tamlin, the stage manager and her partner, have just really adapted and looked at the situation and gone, how can we properly engage with that age group without, you know, through this platform, without it being cold and without it being just something that we're showing them a video. So we've kind of got a 2-3 part system about Potato Needs Bath, and it's really working well. And, you know, Anna's been working on it, and she's just, I had a meeting with Anna yesterday, and you know what really pleased me was somebody that I work with coming to me and saying, I'm really excited by something and I'm really like enjoying my work right now. And it's like, that's been rare actually. But just to say, there's one other thing that we've been doing that I'm really excited about actually, and it's really made us look at a different way of how we engage with our family audience at our festival. So when we cancelled our festival in May, we started to obviously quickly start thinking about 2021, because obviously in 2020 when the festival's on, you're already almost planned your 21 festival. So, you know, we had to quickly start thinking, okay, what are we going to do next and how are we going to engage? And it's been such a long process, and it's still a process going on. But one of the exciting things I think that's happening, and hopefully we'll be able to do it live next year, is this concept of a concept we've come up with called family encounters. Now, it's not that far from something that we've been doing before, which was a family day at the museum, the National Museum of Scotland, which is normally a one-day event, but we've adapted it now to be, it's going to be over 2 weekends. I'm not going to tell you too much about it because I'll get a ride from Marion, our marketing manager, that again, like Peter, of announcing things before they're actually on sale. But it's just going to be a bit more local and a bit more spread across Edinburgh. And you know, we've mentioned 15 different artists who will work with, so we've got about 60 people we're employing just through that one project, and people are starting to make work again, and we're starting to look at, you know, work that is potentially possible within the situation, and that is just so exciting and makes my life feel a little bit better.
Yeah, just the phrase starting to make work again just makes my heart go like that. Anna, I don't know if you want to chime in at all. You'd be very welcome to.
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. Hi. Yeah, slightly what Pam said. But I guess, I am feeling very inspired right now. You know, at the start of this, we did a lot of cancelling and trying again and cancelling again. And then we really settled into, okay, this is a year to learn. This is a year to not do what we just always do, and to learn additional and different. And we've worked with the 2 companies who we plan to be touring with at the moment. They would be out right now, to kind of reconfigure and think about that in a bit of a deeper way. And yeah, Shona is definitely, and Potato Needs a Bath, a show she knows so well, has been amazing to watch her kind of go through that process of how can this be still a bit live, how can this be meaningful in the way that we would normally be there. And we've learned a lot about added benefits and what we can ask the teachers to take on in that process and push that a little bit more. And I think, and the other really inspiring is that first day when we beamed into a classroom and you just realised how much you'd missed that, and you saw those, oh, you can probably hear my voice wobbling a bit. You saw those faces, and that's what we do. We're in those schools at ridiculous times of the morning, on small, an estate in a small town or a tiny village, and I didn't realise how much I'd missed it until I was sort of there again.
Yeah, we're all with you. I'm feeling it too. Yeah, I think when you say seeing the faces, I immediately get a very strong picture in my head of early years children engaging with live theatre, and there's no replacement for that moment of that live encounter. But I think I'm equally excited by some of these new ways of working that we're sort of having to stumble across and discover by necessity. Yeah, thank you for those. It's nice to start off with some inspiration. Now let's get into the gritty bit. So I would like us to talk about two kind of key things today as a starting point. One is around widening access, widening participation, widening engagement in terms of inclusive praxis, because I know here in the UK we're very aware that the pandemic is widening inequalities. And certainly we're seeing a number of barriers in terms of our ability to go, for example, back into schools with ease still at the moment with our current guidelines. But I'm really aware that we have a lot of expertise on the panel today around enrichment, around widening access, around inclusive practice, about how we open out who gets to play, who gets to watch, who gets to take part. So I would like us to have a bit of a conversation about that. How do we go forward, guys, right now? How do we ensure that there is still an inclusive, wide open remit about who gets this culture and creativity stuff? And so that could be a very practical answer, if that's, if you've got an idea in your head, something that you're visioning and working towards, or it could be a set of provocations if you want to pose us some and we can have a spicy conversation. But how do we keep widening this stuff out? Any thoughts? Anyone want to go first? Boomer.
Sure, I don't mind. Sure. I guess to start with the positive, like for us at IPAY, this has been an opportunity to play with the idea of how we select work or how we choose what we're going to showcase. I mean, I'm talking about a professional audience, obviously, and how we pick the work that we're going to show to that audience or that network. And so traditionally we have a selection committee. It's, there's a rubric of criteria and, a very systematic way of how we look at the work that's being submitted, and we pick based on that criteria, and that works from a certain perspective. But it also excludes a lot of people. And so when we shifted to the online platform, we honored that selection process for the first series that we did, the first in the series. And then for the second one that we're in now, and for the third one that's coming up in January, we completely stripped away the selection committee. And anyone who wanted to submit, we said, yep, we will honor your work, we'll showcase it. You'll be in the same mix as everybody else. And so we've been playing with that idea of gatekeeping, and we don't curate. It's a showcase, not a festival, but we're trying to play with that idea of curation and how things are chosen and why they're chosen, and the role that we've played as gatekeeper. And so it's trying to open that up. The challenge I find with that, or that we're still trying to investigate or interrogate, is it's not as easy as just opening the gate. If the space on the other side is not known, if you don't find that a safe space, then you're still not going to walk through that gate, even though it's wide open. And so we're still trying to think about what it means to develop relationships. What does safe space mean in every single context? So there's still tons of barriers, even though we say, no, anyone can submit their work. And so it's about language, perhaps. It's about, why would I want to sell my work? Why, who's on the other side? So there's lots of work to be done. I think still it's, you know, this platform is very open, anyone can sign up for it, but there's still barriers. You know, it's I'm able-bodied, I speak English, which is still the dominant language in this part of the world. You know, so I'm very privileged to be able to participate in a lot of these things, that I recognize there are many individuals who can't access this platform.
Thank you. That's really interesting to hear that perspective in terms of opening out artist engagement and diversity of voices within artists as well. That's just expanded how I was thinking about that. Thank you for that. Peter or Pamela, any thoughts on widening access?
Pam, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we work obviously with lots of schools. We do lots of schools projects to kind of focus on that a wee bit, and this obviously with what's happened with COVID has we started to question why we do things, I suppose, and really focus on our representation in the work that we do. And it's really given us time, I suppose, to start listening more, and especially within our schools projects, I suppose we created a project called Teachers Theatre Club a couple of years ago. Is it 2 years ago? Yeah, this is our second year of Teachers Theatre Club, a brilliant initiative that was funded as part of this big package of funding through place funding, which was specifically for Edinburgh festivals, to expand and widen the work we do. And through that project, we created this Teachers Theatre Club, and that allowed us to kind of have a bit more access to teachers and start to really listen a bit more to the needs of teachers and understand their barriers, I suppose, and also the barriers for children a bit more. And so we're kind of working alongside teachers more to kind of develop the work and move the work on, you know, and try to challenge some of the areas of inequality across for our audience. And yeah, we do have curate our festival programme, and Noel Jordan's our festival director. We have a part of our programme that's curated, and a part of our programme that's curated through a selection process for Scottish artists. But what I would say is that we have a variety. We do a huge amount of artist development work, and all of that is selected by a committee, and we always have an artist as part of that selection process. And that's been something that Fiona Ferguson, our creative development director, has done for years, I think probably since she started with Imaginate. And I think it's really important to have that artist voice in the room. I mean, often I've been on selection panels, and it's just the information that they have compared to us as a company who's an RFO, a regularly funded organisation, just as an artist living in that world and applying for work all the time, and having that sort of expertise on the panel. But one of the things we're trying to do at Imaginate is have places that people can go from any angle. So we have a project called Launchpad, which is for early years artists. We have a project called Accelerator, which is about accelerating work from that early stage to the later stage. We have access points within our festival for people who have never came to our festival before, work maybe in the adult sector and want to know. So we're trying to look at our programme holistically across the audiences that we serve, but also across artists that we serve, because essentially we do serve our artists and audiences. That's why we're here, you know. And I think we have been given some time to listen and remember that, and look at kind of the inequality that's within our schools and our sector and our community of artists. And hopefully some of the work that we're starting to do, or that we will do soon, hopefully, will start to just make a small dent, hopefully, in that. And I agree with Boomer, there's such a long way to go, especially within representation of artists and work, and who we represent on stage as well, and, you know, what kind of person we're representing on stage to children and within the work we do. There's still a lot of work, and you know, there needs to be more space given to it. And I just hope that we get to the point where we can go back to our offices and we can continue the work we do, and we don't start forgetting these things. Because already, you know, even with the sort of way we work now, and there's already like kind of a shift. There was time where I think the our sector was really reflecting on how we work, who we work with, why we do it. And I think that there's now becoming this thing of going back into a system where, but get back to work and get back to doing things. And I just hope that it doesn't stop us questioning why we do things and also questioning who we're working with, because I think that's important.
Yeah, I feel a similar thing, that there's a slight move towards returning to business as usual. And it feels like those deep questions about which stories we're telling and who we're telling those stories to need to stay right at the heart of how we go forward. Peter, thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's been really interesting thoughts from the other panelists. I mean, we're always, my practice is to take the work directly into schools, and to take it into schools which don't necessarily, don't choose to work with us or don't know about us, and choosing those schools carefully. We've worked with the Immerse project and Pamela in Edinburgh and Imaginate Edinburgh, and that's been very much about taking it to schools where access to culture is low and where levels of free school meals might be high, and linking, trying to make the biggest impact possible. So I've always been about widening access and trying to put the work in interesting places, whether it is doing a project in a care home as part of project with Magic Me, who are a great intergenerational arts company, and they were all about trying to bring different artists with different kind of practices and bringing them into that space. So I love the sort of I love taking work into those spaces. I think we, as an organisation, I think it's really right to say that the sector is thinking about getting on its feet, and constantly in my mind is holding in our heads the conversations that we've had as a team about values as well, very much picking up on who's telling the story, who represents our team, and because I'm aware of who I am and where some of the work that I've created over the last 10 or so years within the enrichment, I'm aware of where that comes from. We've done lots of work to try and ensure that our sets and the work reflects the schools and the cultures that those schools represent. But we're nowhere near doing as much as we could be doing. We work hard to make everything as accessible as possible in terms of physical needs. But again, there's more we can do there. So I think we need to hold in our head, and it's a conversation that we've started, but we need to continue, and we're very aware as a company in terms of looking at our values, looking at where the stories come from, who are the artists who are going to help us tell those stories. And one thing, an element of this, which is really exciting for us at the moment, is and really important to me, we're moving to a Woolwich, a cultural quarter called the Woolwich Works in South London.
Cool.
And we're and I'll save the actual plug till later, but part of what we're doing is we've got a talent development program. So there's a high level of youth unemployment, endemic unemployment in that area, and I want to make sure that not only are we reflecting the diversity of that area in our work, and our staff, but actually we're reaching as many people as possible. So we're going out into the community next year virtually, in person, potentially in a bigger way, in a bus as well, and yeah, just trying to kind of make sure that all of the work and the jobs that we will have on offer are going to reach people of that borough, and actually people who might not have necessarily thought about having a career in theatre, or so it's really, I think, is a lot about what networks are you into as well. As often when you're recruiting as well, it's very much about thinking about who do you represent as an organisation, how are you showing that to who are potential candidates, and also thinking about how are you reaching people, and how are you, and that is not an easy task to do, and we've done lots in terms of anonymizing our application processes, so that we can't see a lot of key information you might expect to see when you're getting applications, as well as trying to find new networks and do workshops and work in areas where we're warming the ground, as it were, in terms of trying to get applications from different communities and from different individuals. But yeah, as Pamela said, the work is ongoing and is and we've only really, you know, scratched the surface, to be honest. And we need to pressurize ourselves. And actually, as a company, we said to our board very loud and clear, you need to challenge us every time we come to meet about how well we're doing on this. You know, so we're trying to, at all levels of the organisation, make sure that it's a standing item, really, and continuing to push ourselves and to give ourselves the space as a company to have that, those conversations. Because I can also feel like, you know, my point earlier about, you know, being really excited about making work again, you're slipping back, and you're not, you know, you've got to go, right, when do we make that time in the organisation to have those conversations and to hold ourselves to account and to feel comfortable with being uncomfortable as well, I think is really important. And going, look, we're not getting it right. We need to get it right. You know, to be as honest as possible. So we've begun those conversations, and it feels like a really important year this year. And I think we need to challenge ourselves to carry on doing that and look 360, which is difficult as well, and acknowledging you can't solve everything at once, or not every story you're going to tell is going to solve, you know, going to represent everything, and being okay with that actually, and going, what are we trying to tell with the story, and being upfront and open about whether or not it's about disability, whether or not it's about gender or sexuality or race, or representation, and feeling really secure in that as well. So we're beginning those conversations, and it's good to be reminded by this panel today, and to be you know, to sort of say that out loud. And because once you say things out loud as well, you as far as I'm concerned, you've got to try and do them.
Just to chime in on what Peter was saying, I think one of the things that's just not reminded me, it's something that I talk about and think about every day, but we worked with, I'm pointing at, I think you are right under me, but we worked with Punchdrunk recently, and we still are working with Punchdrunk on our Immerse programme of work. And one of the things that's really important, I think, is the partners that you work with and the partnerships that you make, and who you choose to work with and their values. Because I think that, you know, you could have hundreds of partners, and spread yourself too thin, but actually having really specific partners that really chime with what you do. I think Punchdrunk and Enrichment and Imaginate, you know, in our schools programme, really, we worked really well together because we have the same sort of values. And I think it's the same sort of with our Theatre and School Scotland programme and National Theatre Scotland, you know, and having those aims and goals together as partners, I think really works. And really diversifying your partners, because I think one of the things that we recognise in Scotland is, in Imaginate, is that we're not the experts in a lot of things, but we have people who in Scotland, and companies in Scotland who, or not even in Scotland, internationally, with our Push Plus project, we work a lot with a lot of different European partners, and we're not the experts in a lot of stuff, but we do know people who are. And I think it's always about going to those people to help you kind of mold your values, or just be the ones that's forefront, rather than, you know, and you be the silent partner almost, or the one that works with them.
I was struck while both you and Peter were talking just now about the value of us to each other as critical friends. And I've been thinking a lot about this, about it's not about whistleblowing, but it's about holding each other to account. It's about us holding each other to account in the way that we would like to be held to account. And I think there's an honesty we can have with each other as a sector that could be really valuable right now. I'm also really struck by the returning of the phrase time. Like, that we had time, we needed this time to reflect, time to return to those values. And it does make me think a lot about the pace at which we usually deliver work in the normal, and how little time that leaves for that kind of deeper reflection. So yeah, I think there's a few things there. Anna, your hand popped up at one point there. It would be lovely to hear from you. Did you want to chime in on any of those points?
Yeah, I suppose what it was when Peter was talking about taking the theatres to where the children are. So obviously Theatre in Schools Scotland is set up on the ethos that it should be able to go to any school anywhere in Scotland. And that's, you know, massively challenging for geographically in some cases, but also to create the engagement from a teacher or a head teacher that allows us to reach the child. So, and one thing that I suppose I've been learning this year, you know, tomorrow morning we're going to be doing Potato Needs a Bath with a school right up near Loch Broom. We've tried to go there for 3 years in a row. We just haven't managed it. And tomorrow we do, in some form. You know, last week we went to every school in Orkney. Now we go to Orkney every year, but we don't get the little school across because the ferry isn't at the right time. You know, we haven't actually met every school in Orkney before. So there's definitely benefits. To be positive, there's definitely benefits of this pushing the way we're working, even if we have that level ethos that we're constantly trying to make sure the barriers aren't there. It's just looking for the opportunities when you're working in a different way. And I suppose, sorry, the thing, I realised this morning when there was a school from Edinburgh on the screen and there was a school from Orkney on screen, and to me, they felt no different. And that was quite a moment as well. Yeah.
I was just going to say thank you for the image of the ferry to Orkney that I've got in my mind right now. It's a really lovely little vivid picture in my head. I've got one last prompt which I'd like to ask you, but I'd also really like to welcome our attendees to ask some questions. I certainly have about 100 million follow-up questions to a lot of the things that you've already mentioned. And I think it would be really beneficial for us to include some links in the chat, some of the programs that you're talking about, because the richness that's present in the practice that you're describing is so fantastic. So for people to be able to explore some of those programs more, who are sat there listening, I think could be really beneficial. So we'll see if we can do that behind the scenes as well. But please do pepper us with questions. Use the Q&A tab if you'd like to. Oh, fantastic. Oh, we've got a follow-up question right now, which I'll actually go with. So this is framed to Boomer and to Pamela, but Peter, feel free to chime in. Anna, feel free to chime in as well. And it's a question from Josie Dale Jones from This Egg Theatre Company. And she's wondering how, when, and if you've managed to be part of a festival or showcase through an open submission. The process of the festival itself and the reasons behind it, often to book a show, for example, can reflect that change to support programmers and artists. So, for example, how programmers are supported when there is more work to watch, and artists are supported when their work is one amongst so many. So I think this is about like, okay, yeah, let's open it out, but then what? Then what does that support look like? Like, how do we meaningfully enable that artist is supported beyond that point of open submission? Going back to, I think, some of Boomer's really important points from the beginning of this conversation. I don't know if either of you want to speak to that at all.
I guess I think if I understand the question right, it's so like if you go from a curated or adjudicated group of 15 to all of a sudden you've got 100, how do you help the presenters, or how do you, am I on the right track there?
Yeah, I think so. Go for it.
Okay, so one of the things that we've been playing with and was originally part of our concept for this would be that we would invite guest, not curators, but guest artists to pick work that was interesting from their perspective. Again, playing with the idea that, you know, we're all coming to things from our own personal contexts, and, you know, everything in it that informs who we are, where we're from, what we do, who our audience is. You know, so if we had different people from around the world say, these 4 work out of that 100 are interesting to me from this perspective, that helps give entry point a little bit. And also, again, it's helping to diversify the perspective of who's selecting or who's guiding the work. That's the part of the power dynamic that we're trying to deal with, is if one person or 3 people have the power of choosing and saying, this is the stuff you should watch, that to me is problematic in many ways. And that's coming from someone who has curated festivals. So like I understand both sides of that. But as an organization that's trying to promote to a broad network, recognizing that one size doesn't fit all, and we're not all looking for the same thing. We're not all looking for the same story. You know, I think that's what we're trying to do, is diversify the perspective and diversify who holds that power in choosing.
It makes me think as well about that healthy discomfort we were talking about earlier, that sometimes in that process means things get programmed that you might not have selected, and sitting with this isn't my aesthetic, or these aren't my values at play, but maybe there's something for me to learn here, feels like a really important thing.
Absolutely. And I think there's a dichotomy, because I agree with what Anna was saying about how the school from Edinburgh and the school from Orkney at one point were like the same, but then I almost immediately react to that too, because they're not, and we have to recognize those differences. The 8-year-old kid in Orkney has a completely different life experience than the 8-year-old kid in Edinburgh. And if that's a Black queer kid in Edinburgh, that's a completely different experience than a white cisgendered, kid in Edinburgh. And so there's this danger of treating everyone the same, because we're not all the same. And so how do our stories reflect those differences? How do we, with everyone around us, reflect those differences? So it's like, it's that constant battle of those two, balancing those two things,
Yeah.
And you never get more of a diverse audience than a school audience. That's your most diverse audience. I mean, as in, because you're going to they're often not choosing. Somebody's choosing for them in the best possible way, So yeah. So I was just going to say that about the sort of programmer thing. I mean, we do curate our festival, so it's slightly different. But one of the things that there's probably delegates on here that come to our festival and they're like, oh, that's what she does. But one of the things that we try to do, and we have normally got a delegate coordinator that works with us during our festival, but there's a team of us that kind of work with delegates who are coming to our festival, and we know quite a lot of them really well, and it's really nice, and we kind of try to get to know the delegates before they come to our festival. But one of the things we really do is encourage them to see something that they probably wouldn't go and see. So it's almost a challenge that we set ourselves at the start of the process with delegates, that we're often like recommending or going, oh well, if you see this, you can also go and see this, because you have enough time if you just catch the bus. And so we're always trying to kind of make sure that we're given the best possible chance for the work that we put out there, for the artists to be able to get certain delegates to see the work, because it's like what Boomer says. I think their programmers very set in their ways sometimes, and not all the time, and they sometimes go, this is what I want to see, I want this age group, I only want to see work in that age group, or I only want to see work of dance, so it's about kind of trying to work with, as a company, we try to work with those delegates to give them what they want and what they think they want, but also give them what they need and what we need as well. So, and then we also, I suppose with Imaginate, one of the things we try to do, even though we have like sort of a set program of 15 works, and often that can be like up to kind of 8 different countries, because we are an international festival. But one of the things that works really well normally at our festival when it's live is that people come and use it as a place to meet, and we try as a company to really showcase the Scottish artists and work. So we're often talking about work that isn't part of our festival, but we want to help try and sell for Scotland, and hopefully I would hope that artists in Scotland feel that we are part of that sort of network of helping them sell work throughout for the young audiences sector. So, we're often going to talk to delegates at our festival and trying to sell 10 different things for different age groups, for, different kinds of work, and, trying to be that kind of conduit for that. But again, just to say, that also does make us the gatekeepers, and I'm totally aware of that as well, so.
The fine line between gatekeeper and enabler sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know, Peter or Anna, if you wanted to chime in. That felt like, in a way, a good segue to some of the things I was going to say about sustainability, but I want to make sure you have a chance to say anything you might like to say about that topic before we move on.
I mean, we don't program work, but I think we are beginning to think more about who helps make the work. And actually, I'm an unashamed plug for our Big Give campaign here, which I'll put the link in the post. We've got the Big Give campaign. So that's for talent development. But we are looking at how we can anybody we work with, when we work with them in Woolwich, how can we stay connected with them? How can we bring them into the organisation, even if it's monthly for a coffee? And so how can you kind of grow new artists or people into different career paths, so that you're, as a gatekeeper, you're not just a gatekeeper, you're also a signposter as well, because actually, with the best will in the world, any company only has so many opportunities. But if you can be a place where you're sort of pinging people onwards or opening eyes to different things happening. So I suppose what I'm saying there is that we're trying to widen up the accessibility into, in terms of our friends, and in that sense, trying to, only then will we meet new people who we didn't know about beforehand, who are then going to go on to be like, that's the new, associate director. So we are thinking a lot about shadowing as well, and are thinking a lot about being very specific about who we might recruit. So it's very early for us in terms of doing those things, but there's lots of stuff sort of primed and waiting in the wings, as it were. But I'm really interested in how we genuinely do broaden access across, and also entry points as well, because I think often there's not a very clear route into the arts, is there? That's the point. But there is a sort of sense that it can often be via a BA honours degree. And actually, that's not everybody's experience, and nor should it be the only place we look to when we think about who becomes the future workforce for the arts and the future fabric of our industry. So also thinking about, you're only going to find a certain type of person when you look in a certain type of place. So I think sort of, just to think about broadening those networks, thinking about access again through lots of different lenses, and thinking about opening people's eyes to opportunities they didn't think were for them necessarily, or they didn't, because they might not have known about them.
Yeah. I'm, as you're talking, I'm visualizing both the group of university students I just left teaching this morning, who are facing entry into an increasingly challenging industry right now, but also the young people I work with on a Monday evening who are very much not on a university track, who are facing ever increasing barriers. And just remembering all of them, I think, right now. I think that feels like a nice link point to talk a little bit about sustainability. So I'm really aware that our industry is facing some extremely scary economic realities and challenges. And you've spoken so eloquently already today about some of the ways that you're pivoting and adapting and trying to hold true to your values. But I think we have to talk about the sustainability of our practice. If we're talking about how we go forward from here, we have to have some really honest conversations, and I think sometimes some scary conversations about what our work looks like going forward. And we're talking about Brexit, we're talking about COVID, we're talking about the cultural value of cultural and creative education, which I'm not sure is on the top of everybody's list if we talk to the general public. So I guess that's me setting you up to either take that to a very negative place or a somewhat inspiring mixed place. If we're going to talk about the sustainability of our work, what's in your hearts and minds as you look at that kind of longer term picture? And it could be that we're talking about economic sustainability, but I'm really aware that there's topics around environmental sustainability here. There are other ways that we could define that term. But let's cast our eyes forward a little bit. And as we're talking about this, please, attendees, feel free to keep asking us any questions you'd like to ask, and we'll turn it over to you in just a minute. Any thoughts on sustainability going forward?
I'm happy to start.
Go on, Pamela.
It's interesting actually you bring up about sustainability, because we are really lucky at Imaginate. Every year we have a kind of away day that we go away to, like a nice wood somewhere and stay in a house, and it's great. But I am going somewhere with this, and I'm just telling you about our nice away days. And interestingly, we normally have it around about October, November, and I think it was like mid-October in 2019 where we had our away day, and it's to look at kind of like our business plan and kind of our aims and objectives and our values. And the one thing that we kept talking about was the fact that we were an international festival and we really needed to tackle environmental sustainability. And it's a really difficult topic when you're an international company or a company that works internationally. And, you know, looking at our plans around that and looking at how we could change our plans. And a lot of those were around flights and around touring and around bringing, you know, companies to Scotland that were performing for 3-4 days, you know, and that kind of thing. And then interestingly, we didn't have to necessarily tackle that topic as much in 2020, because a lot of our plans that we had started to go, right, how can we really tackle this, was around travel, around the change in, you know, how we work and that kind of thing. I mean, it's not that it's not still at the forefront of our minds, but it's really interesting how it automatically has made us look at the way we work and how we work. And I think for us as a company, definitely environmental sustainability is still at the forefront of kind of what we're talking about and thinking about going forward, and looking at the models of how we work within our touring models, within sort of international companies when they can come to Scotland. Like, how do we work with those companies to help them hopefully get onward touring, connecting more with sort of English venues and more Scottish venues, about helping those companies tour a bit more, but also just about you know, the way that we present work as well in Scotland, and, you know, encouraging sort of, not necessarily franchise is probably the worst way to call it, but, you know, kind of a model where we can present work either digitally, or we can present work where it's a Chinese cast rather than a Scottish cast. And I know that Catherine Wheels has done that a lot, you know, with White company in Scotland, and with other shows, and there's people starting to think in that way. And one of the interesting things that was happening pre-COVID was a lot of our artists, we do this project called Push Plus, and some of that was looking at kind of environmental sustainability, even though the topics weren't necessarily focused on that. Like one of our topics was home, and there was lots of artists discussing this during that lab, you know. And and a lot of our artists who were part of the home lab, when we had asked if they wanted to come with us to Showbox, that was part of the package sort of thing. A few of them had said, well, yes, but we have to find a way of getting us there by train, because I no longer am taking flights. You know, and that really has started to open up our eyes. And we had already started to just, you know, try to say no trains within the UK. And, you know, if we're traveling in Europe, how can we take no flights or one flight? And, you know, I think there's really practical things that we can all start thinking about. And COVID has obviously opened up our eyes to a lot more as well. So yeah.
Thanks for that, Pamela. Boomer or Peter, any thoughts? And you can interpret sustainability different if that makes it a juicier question for you to answer. That's fine.
Sure, I'll jump in. I guess two things come to mind at the moment. One of which goes back to what we were talking about earlier, and it's the sustainability of values. You know, I really fear when we come out of this, and that's in air quotes, when we come out of this, I really fear that because of the economic challenges that we'll face, that once again values will go onto the back burner, and there'll be statements on people's web pages. And because we'll be back in the time crunch, because we'll be scrambling even more for money and for economic survival, that all of a sudden accessibility and inclusivity and you know, all of the things that in this moment we're taking the time to say are important, that they'll once again get put on the back burner. And I understand the risk that you know, I understand all the practical reasons of why that will happen, but I'm fearful in this moment that we keep saying the world is going to be different when we come out, and yet in this moment I'm not hearing a lot of conversations about how do we ensure that it's different when we come out on the other side of this. And then the other thing is completely different but related, and it's emotional sustainability. And you know, I'm really fearful for artistic leaders and leaders of organizations who, you know, many of which have that survivor syndrome at the moment, and you know, they're feeling guilty about having money and being able to make work, and you know, still having a job, while our colleagues might not have any of those things anymore. And the pressure to keep a company going and to you know, to fight through this thing when we don't know how long it's going to last. And I just know there's just so much emotional turmoil at the moment that I'm really fearful for sector-wide burnout on a scale we've never ever seen before.
We're all nodding as you're saying that. There was a mutual nod. Yeah, that feels like an international worry. Thanks for that, Boomer. Peter, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I sort of think that to take a different tack, I think on the sustainability of the sector, I think one thing that we're acutely aware of, and we are developing our work with freelancers, because you know, we've got a number of individuals in the organisation who, you know, were freelancers and then moved over to becoming permanent members of staff, and you know, a lot of their reflections, but you know, put a lot of people on furlough, and they were really grateful of that opportunity. You know, really grateful that they were employed. And you know, we're not just a team of core staff, we're a team, we're a wide family, a broad family, a broad church of freelancers. And you just you suddenly realize that when the, you know, the crap hits the fan like it has, that you know, that there's lots of people who aren't able to you know, who aren't able to make ends meet. So, and you feel like, you know, very acutely, we're not doing enough with these guys. So we're doing a lot of work about, you know, building a freelancer network, thinking about whether or not there's anything hardship wise we can apply to freelancers, and the freelancer network really being about bringing that voice into our company more, and actually making sure we've got reps who are with us not full time, but on a kind of 2-day-a-week contract, where they help run the freelancer network that meets quarterly, and also where they are a voice in interviews, a voice at the board at the right moment, understanding what's going on programming wise, not inputting into policy, because you know, I think, you know, we need to treat our freelancers better. And I'm saying we, you know, Punchdrunk do, and we were, you know, we're reviewing pay, and we really want to make sure they're part of the conversation. They're a big part of the organisation. They make a decision to be legally sort of employed in a different way, and that's their choice, and we respect that. But at the same time, when you work freelancers over, you know, many years, and they're some of the reasons why projects are so bloody fantastic, and they're at the forefront of it, you want to now in these moments go, it's not sustainable if this ever happens again, or that your situation is really precarious and ours isn't, and that's not fair. That's not fair that we're on one side of the tracks and you're on the other. At a point like this. So how can we be more resilient? How can we be more inclusive? How can we be more sustainable with that those brilliant artists? So we're thinking a lot about that, and that's clearly something people are, you know, we're getting through the cracks today. People are falling through the cracks and who aren't getting any of that support out there. So I think we've got a real duty as gatekeepers, as people who've got that influence and that power to kind of, you know, divert some of whatever limited resource it is, whether it's time, whether it's money, whether it's you know, contacts or support, emotionally or otherwise, to kind of to bring everybody through. And as Boomer says, that a lot, you know, that's draining. It's draining as well, but we need to kind of pull those guys through, because you don't want to see your trusted colleagues be doing something which is not going to make them happy, because that emotionally is worse for them if they end up doing something which is not as fulfilling or not reaching their potential. So I think sustainability of the sector at the moment, and the debt we owe to kind of bringing everybody through this, and freelance artists as well, is really, really important. And so we've been thinking a lot about that now, just making plans not fast enough, but we're, you know, kind of helping those guys out. And I know there's been, you know, freelancers have supported that, and I know lots of organizations are doing it as well. So just a shout out to the freelancers, and to for us all to think about what we might do to support our freelance workforce.
Yeah, here, Peter, and thanks for raising it. It's such an important point, and I think it's gone slightly off the public radar a little bit, and their situations are even more dire financially now than they were earlier in the pandemic. So yeah, thank you for that. Feels like a place where using our role as allies and advocates if we are in a funded organisation, feels extra urgent and important right now. We're getting peppered with questions, and I'm being very lax about going to them, so we're going to them now. We have a follow-up question about environmental action steps, Pamela, just I think coming off the heels of some of the things you were saying. It's a very practical question from Maya George. She just says, Pamela, could you share some of the ideas you've got around environmental sustainability? Rural audiences can be small, and I know Maya works with Villages in Action, which is a rural touring scheme down here in the Southwest. And she says, I have a fear that because numbers are small, they won't get the production experiences of other places with larger audiences. I think it's just thinking about practically, what does that look like? Any thoughts? Any follow-up?
I mean, one of the things that we had started to do with Theatre School Scotland, actually, and it's something, I mean, this is very much from a company point of view. I mean, hopefully this could be something that maybe venues could do as well for their local community. But we started a small school subsidy so that small schools could apply for that subsidy to get, so even if it was 4 children in that school, that they could apply for that to be able to get that sort of production. But also one of the things that we do, even though our title is Theatre School Scotland and mainly we do tour to schools, we do occasionally tour to the community hall, so that if there is like 4 schools that are around that area, but they're all really small, because we do work quite a lot, actually. One of the successes of especially Theatre School Scotland is the small schools, because we, you know, have found a way for them to come together in a certain place to share that experience together. And I think one of the things we're thinking of more and more with artist development, but also with performance and touring, is how to connect up our things that we do. So looking at, for example, looking at Scotland as a whole and going, okay, so what do we offer to each local authority, or what do we offer nationally to Scotland, and how can we make that more coherent in a touring point of view? So like, how are we touring, what else is touring around us, and how do we connect up with that, rather than recreating something that, you know, so if somebody's going to a certain area, then not recreating that, not touring in the back of them, sort of thing, so that it's not saturating our audiences, and really trying to spot areas of Scotland which aren't getting anything or are getting very little, and trying to kind of focus the energies on that, and working with local partners. For example, really good company or venue, Life Arts Centre in Scotland, which is at the top, very top of Scotland near Wick, and they're really, really proactive in artist development, but also touring productions to, you know, productions come to them. But we're trying to kind of work with places like that so that we can locally sort of develop the talent. And we don't do enough of it, actually, and we're planning to hopefully do more of that in the future. But that's one of the things that I would say, that as a sort of national body, we're kind of looking again at our partners and how we can work and develop the local artists, I suppose, that are there. And young audiences, most of the companies that are kind of regularly funded are in the Central Belt, really. There's none that are, I don't think there's none that are funded out with, but we've got lots of, as comes back to actually what Peter was talking about with freelancers, that actually we've got a very small, secure sector in the young audiences sector in Scotland. We've got a huge amount of people that do work and a huge amount of people who want to make work, and we rely completely on freelancers and that sort of thing. Sorry, that's not talking about environmental. I should come back to more ideas.
I think it's a really lovely answer, and as you were talking, I was imagining what a healthy touring ecosystem looks like in my head. Like, and I mean ecosystem in lots of ways. Like, what does that look like where we're not duplicating work, where we are joining up together, where we are being more efficient and working in greater partnership? And I think Maya's just put a comment in the chat about coherent touring, which is quite a nice phrase.
I think that, sorry, just to say though, I don't think Scotland get it right at the moment. And I don't think our sector get it right at the moment. And I do think we're working much better together, but I do think we can work more with each other, and so that it's not duplicating and so on. There's also things like, our festival goes on tour. So we have a couple of productions that go out each year on tour, so that schools don't feel they need to travel to Edinburgh, I suppose, and that they can get the festival experience out with Edinburgh, because our main core of our work is all based in Edinburgh. And so we're trying to look at ways that we don't have to have schools or audience traveling so much as well. And then those really practical things that we're looking at, and we're not there yet, but is electric vehicles on tour and within our festival. And we're trying to kind of lobby a little bit and work with other companies in Scotland to get more electric vehicles in Scotland. And I think one of the big things in our plan, and we'll continue to strive to do it, is the flights in Europe, and really trying to kind of build in time so that whoever it is, whether it's our festival director going out to see work or whether it's artists going to festivals, but that we are kind of trying to help plan it with trains rather than with flights, because that is one of the big things that I've learned. I'm not the expert either, but
it all comes down to the practicalities at the end of the day, doesn't it? I'm going to get in trouble if I don't turn this over to more questions, because there is a demand. We have a question from Peter Brosius, who's the artistic director of the Children's Theatre Company in Minnesota, and I think Peter might be up for asking his question himself. Peter, do you want to pose your question to the panel?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good morning. This is great. Hi, Boomer. One of the things the pandemic has certainly heightened is the economic inequalities throughout, and the United States is, of course, just hit so hard with this. One of the things we found is, as schools had to pivot to online learning, there were so many schools that literally 80% of the kids in the school did not have access at home. And so as we've pivoted to increasing our digital programming, we're just wrestling with how to contact with meaningful programming and inspirational content those schools, those families who don't have access. And I'm just wondering if there's examples either that are politically led or council led or community led or theater led that have sort of tried to make an impact in that particular area. Thanks so much.
Oh, it's a great question, Peter. Stay with us because we might want to hear your thoughts at the end. Any thoughts about the digital poverty issues that are endemic here in the UK as well? We're all going to make the same face, aren't we?
I mean, I think that there is money, so there's supposedly money out there. I don't think it's been particularly easy for schools to access. I'm lucky enough to be a governor, and I saw part of the money that one of the schools in the federation I work with had spent quite a lot of money on Chromebooks to make sure that, where children didn't have access to digital tech, they could have access to it. But it is interestingly, there was a comment the other day about a lot of the pupil premium students were ahead in their ICT work, but behind in their handwriting, which so there is access potentially, but there's not necessarily. I think there's also something about there's a lot of work to do with parents as well, and children might be sort of digital and have device, but then might also, I think another thing to consider is whether or not parents know how to access things as well, and have the confidence to do it, because parents in that place become the gatekeepers there. But no, it's something we're wrestling with at the moment, because you forget that it's not something everybody has in their pocket, or not that everybody will have the same applications or. So I think there is money out there, but it's not always hard to access, and it's not been forthcoming in the UK as quick as it could be. So because it's probably wrapped up in bureaucracy. But I think what we're trying to do is to try and put stuff into homes in the future where it is not digital at all, it's paper and imagination led. But even then, I think another thing has been about what do parents and families want to take on at home at the moment, because home can be quite stressful as well, because there's lots going on generally. And actually, do you want to what's the level of engagement you want to try and engender, embolden them to do, when they might actually just be wanting to get through the day and not do something any more than that. I think it is an issue, and I don't think it's something that's been cracked, and it's something that has been highlighted. I've certainly heard that there's been more uptake of free school meals and pupil premium during the pandemic, because a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily have kind of acknowledged that or gone for that funding have had no choice. So I think it's something that schools need to continually address, and to ensure that pupils who don't have that have access to that, because that will only contribute to the widening gap in some respects of the haves and the have-nots. I don't know whether that answers the question, Peter, but
I don't know if we're going to be able to answer this one.
All right.
Can I answer that? Sorry.
Can I just
Go
add?
on, Anna. Yeah.
So we obviously offered for Potato Needs a Bath, we offered for children who were self-isolating or shielding to access it. So I was kind of quizzing schools about how that would work. And it seemed fairly across the board that Chromebooks and iPads, depending on the local authority, were available to go home. But I think the main thing I wanted to flag is that we could not have done this a year ago, and that's down to teacher confidence with the tech and the upgrading that schools have done, even just on their broadband, to enable teachers to be confident using the equipment as well. And one of the barriers usually is teachers who aren't necessarily confident to work with a piece of theatre in school. So to then add this into it as well has been quite something for some teachers. But without a doubt, we could not have done this, and we could not have felt comfortable that we were offering it fairly even 6 months ago.
It makes you realize how quickly our rate of adaptation has had to happen. Other thoughts, proactive ideas, suggestions, solutions?
No, I was just going to, actually, it wasn't very proactive, sorry, but I was just going to say about that. I think there's also the language barrier as well, not just language around tech, but language around actual language. And a lot of the, some of the schools that we work with our Immerse project actually are very diverse in different languages, and I think it's been a real difficulty. I think also there's something that's probably not been spoken about enough about the digital technology is actually opening up into people's houses as well, and there's all this inequality around what people have and how people their environment sort of thing. And I think that's also been a pressure on parents, on teachers, on on individuals, not just children. But I do think that we've done a number of things we did an ideas fund, which was basically we fundraised after our festival was cancelled to do some work that would go into work for families and schools and for kind of our audiences that we couldn't serve at the time. And a lot of the work that we did was arty packs, or was driven not by digital. And we kind of really, like Fiona and Kirsty, who we work with, really made an effort to kind of look at the work that wasn't necessarily just digital. We've got some really lovely digital projects that we did as well, but we've also got some really lovely audio projects that were done over the phone with children, and some work that was done out in the streets with children that did some art projects and so on. So I think it is still really important there is a digital poverty, but I think there's also a sort of focus that we're having around it as well. And I do think there should be more focus on what we can do about not just making everything digital, and there is other ways to connect, and there's other ways that not to put pressure on those parents, because there's lots of parents, and even I was one of those parents that I know how to work a computer and so on, but when I had to then do online learning with my child and learn how to be a teacher, it was impossible, and I totally take my hat off to all of these parents that have more than one child, because I don't know how anybody did. Like I knew some parents that had 3 children and were still working full time, and I was just like, how are you even surviving? So anyway, sorry.
Goes back to that emotional sustainability topic again, doesn't it? Yeah. Boomer, I don't know if you want to speak to that one at all. Any thoughts on that?
No, I'm not sure I have. No, I mean, it's the same challenge in Canada, and we're hearing it globally. In Canada, I would say it's probably our Indigenous communities that are most marginalized and suffering from that. And like Peter and Pam and Anna have said, like I've heard lots of regional solutions, but nothing national. Yeah. You know, the library bus going out and broadcasting its Wi-Fi in areas, and lending laptops and those kinds of solutions. But again, those are all regional solutions, which I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think I like that aspect of communities coming together to solve the issues, but I think there also needs to be some kind of national cohesion addressing these inequities as well.
Yeah.
Doesn't help you, Peter.
Peter, do you want to say anything back? Oh, he's still muted.
I guess I love the ideas of finding community spaces, whether those are, you know, community centers, libraries, churches, where people can access and create, you know, opportunities there to access digital programming. And also, you know, how do we think about analog, you know, letter writing and, you know, mural projects, et cetera, you know, and visual projects. So yeah. I'll just, you know, this is just something that's so present here, and obviously a global problem, but I think it's also a time for creativity and then political mobilization, because thanks so much. Really appreciate this.
Thank you for that, Peter. Yeah, creativity and political mobilization, both together, beautiful synergy. I'm really aware of the time, and we have a number of questions which I don't think we're going to have time to get to, which is always the problem that you want to have. But we've got one last question, which I'll just pose as a final one, which you could just say a couple of thoughts to. And it's a question from a university student, Hannah Giles. And so I think we're all looking for a bit more hope to finish on. She says, what would you say is the most important thing we should take forward, moving forward from the pandemic? What have we learned which is useful or innovative for future practice? So I guess that's a question, a personal question for each of you. What's one thing you are taking forward? And that could be a change in practice, or that might be a recommitment to those values we were talking about at the start. Any thoughts to finish on?
Who wants to go? Oh, hey, look, I'll jump in the cold water first. I think the thing that was necessary but regrettable for us as a charity, the charitable arm of Punchdrunk, was like just having to put everybody on furlough. So we spent 6 months, you know, with me and 3 others in an office, just waiting, really. I think the lesson to take forward is just keep on going. You have to just keep on going. There is an answer out there to do work, and actually that, well, what I would also say is that the digital work we're talking about is not the, you know, there's loads more physical work we'll be doing out there, but the thing I'm trying to tell my team as well is that the models we're developing now are another string to our bow, actually, and actually don't forget about them afterwards. And there we can use them. We can use them in times, you know, whatever a normal time might look again, but when things become more normal again, continue to use them. I'm saying, because I think, you know, there's so much you can take from what we've developed or what we will develop forward. Just keep on using it. It's another string to our bow.
Yeah, thanks for that, Peter. Pamela or Anna, any thoughts?
And I think for me, the one thing that I would take forward is how much more we've thought about accessibility, how much more we thought about our different audiences, from, you know, having BSL, the British Sign Language, as, you know, on talks or captioning, or, you know, being able to connect with people who wouldn't have been, we do a lot of kind of sector events and wouldn't be able to come to our sector events because they're not able to travel or whatever the situation is, but they're able to, you know, connect with us in this way, and kind of being there more in a more accessible way, and not asking, say, freelance artists to travel from Glasgow to Edinburgh to meet us, but being able to just be online. And we are hopefully going to take a lot of what we've started to learn. One of the things I haven't actually mentioned, one of the most brilliant projects that's come from this situation is a project called In a New Light, which is an international project that's working in schools, and it's through Singapore International Project Funding. And anyway, I won't go into the detail of it, but look it up on our website. But this is, it's only come about because of this situation, and the topics they're looking at is environmental kind of topics, and it's 3 different artists, one in Scotland, one in Bangladesh, and one in Singapore, and they're working with 3 different school groups. And the connection that the school groups are having is incredible, and that would not have happened. You know, it might have happened, but the connection with the school groups wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this situation. So yeah.
Thank you for that. We're really tight for time, so I'm just going to go to Boomer. Boomer, what's your one thing you're going to take forward?
I hopped all over the place while both Peter and Pam were talking, so I'll stick with a positive one. I think the mobility of ideas, you know, and it's very connected to what Pam was just saying. But you know, how do we share creative collaborations beyond borders, and you know, how does an artist in Australia work with a producer in Scotland, which is a real example, and develop something that doesn't involve that artist physically traveling with a production, but the idea travels. And so how do we keep those kind of collaborations moving forward, both from an economic perspective and environmental perspective, you know, a sharing of best practice? I hope that's something that sticks with us.
And I would say the mobility of conversations too, like this one. So thank you all. We're 2 minutes over, but it was worth it because you just have filled my heart with hope. So thank you. Thank you, attendees, for joining us today. And indeed, for those of you that have joined us every Thursday for these lunchtime chats, I wish it was my every Thursday. It's just been a real pleasure. Huge thank you to Theatre Alibi and University of Exeter. And we'll wish everyone really well, and let's hope we can resume these conversations in the new year in some other new forum. So if you're sat out there as an attendee listening and you've appreciated this, pick up the baton, let's run with it and keep this stuff moving. Panelists, if you want to just go cameras and mics off for a minute, we'll allow our attendees to say their thanks in the chat and then clear out. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.